Greetings and welcome. So this is, I think, part 5 in this series on the inspiration of the scriptures. So I finally got into my third point. It took a while. So this video is going to be about heresies. So heresies involving um, the inspiration of the scriptures. Heresies involving different beliefs about different false beliefs about how the scriptures got inspired. And some of these are very blatant and obvious, and some of them are a little more subtle and not so obvious. They might sound reasonable, but they're not. Um, so this is something you have to be very careful about. I'm hoping you don't believe any of these, but if you do, just hopefully start thinking a little bit about it. But some people, a lot of lost people believe these. And a lot of like Bible scholars that are a little too educated for their own good also believe in these. And some of these are actually taught at Bible colleges even. So anyway, so I have 6 heresies. I'm not going to have any Bible verses because this topic doesn't require any Bible verses. I'm just covering what's actually going on. So these are just 6 common false beliefs about the inspiration of the scriptures. So my first one is that the first type of heresy is that regular people are like other writers. So that's my first heresy, that regular people are like other writers. So that would mean that you believe that Isaiah, Jeremiah, Moses, any writer of the Bible is just like a regular person. Um, so you do not believe that God inspired those. You don't believe that God inspired them to write those verses, to write those books in the Bible. So obviously this is a heresy. So if you believe this, then you basically invalidate the entire Bible. If you believe that they're capable of being wrong, that the authors of the text, the Bible, were capable of being wrong, then you invalidate the whole Bible. Then at that point, it's just black or white. It's either, if there is no gray area, it's like you either believe the whole Bible is true or you believe the Bible is false. If you allow for a gray area and you think like, well, some of it's true, some of it's false, then how do you know what's true and what's false? At that point, it's just your opinion. And that's really what that's why a lot of people say stuff like this. They try to either invalidate the whole Bible or they'll take the parts of the Bible that they like and then they'll just ignore the rest. And that's what a lot of people do. They just ignore it, ignore the parts of the Bible they don't like. But you have to take, if you're a Christian, you should believe the entire Bible. It's not up to you to decide like what's true and what's false. That's just your opinion. Okay, your opinion doesn't matter here. What matters is what God said. He's the authority. God's the authority, not you. Your opinions are just your opinions. So that's it. And your opinions are going to be biased anyway because you have a lack of information. Um, so anyway, so that's the first one. It's the most obvious one, obviously. Yeah, but you also have to be. There's this one also transfers into translation committees. You have to believe that those people on the translation committee could be inspired. Like I believe, like for the King James, that God inspired those men because they prayed about their translation work, that they were translating perfectly from the Greek to English and from Hebrew to English. If you don't believe that God can preserve those words, then you also have a problem. Then you believe you have errors in your Bible, which is going to cause doubt in people's hearts, and you're going to invalidate your whole belief system. So if you have to believe in the infallibility of the Bible, if you believe there's errors in it, then you could just throw the whole thing out. You have to believe it's perfect. If God inspired it, then it has to be perfect. So there's that. So you have to believe that God can inspire a translation committee. If you believe that, yeah. Anyway, so that's actually getting to another point later. So the second Bible heresy is that modern Christians also have inspiration as well. Now this one's really bad, and this is actually a very common heresy that modern Christians could also have inspiration as well. And this can be divided into 2 categories. I believe there's two that I can think of the top of my head, examples of this happening. So the first one is the Catholic Church, the Pope of the Catholic Church, and the second group is Pentecostals and Charismatics. So those are two groups of people that claim that they can also have inspiration. So the Pope, first, so let's start with the Catholic Church. So you have the Pope. The Pope claims to speak to be infallible and to speak perfectly out of ex cathedra. So when he's speaking from his high station, then what he says is directly from God and is divinely inspired. And this is an official Catholic belief. I don't think they have ever actually renounced that belief. I think officially they still believe. You can check this out, but uh, they have this belief that the Pope speaks infallibly. He cannot speak error. He speaks directly from God, and this is where also you get some false traditions from the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church would say the Pope could say whatever he wants, and that he could override the Bible. So the Pope could say whatever he wants. That's why the Catholics have they have a lot of traditions that oppose the Bible. Um, you wonder, like, why is Catholicism so different? Why do they have all these things? Yeah, because they just made it up as they went. They've had 1700 years, because the Catholic Church started about 380, 325-ish AD or so. So they've had almost 1700 years to just make stuff up as they go. Whatever they felt like doing. They just changed it a little bit as they went, and you have the current situation. So the Pope is infallible, and anything he says is perfect. So his official title is the Vicar of Christ. He is literally a substitute for Jesus Christ on earth. So he's literally saying that he is Jesus Christ. He's speaking for Jesus Christ. He's speaking for God. How more pompous can you get than being the Pope? Literally that's like the most pompous position in existence right now. At least someone like Hitler or Stalin, that's a dictator. We know that's a dictator. They're clearly evil. But throughout the Dark Ages, the Pope would be that kind of a dictator, but he would have this cloak of religion, this cloak of faith. So he could get away with stuff that a normal dictator can't, because a dictator, you can call him evil, right? Because they're evil. The Pope is just as evil, but you can't call him that because he's doing God's work. So it doesn't matter how evil you are. If you are in a position of if you are supposedly doing God's work, then it doesn't matter. It's like, well, it's just God's will. So anything evil that he ever did, well, that's just God's will. I'm just doing God's will. I'm doing God's work. So literally the most pompous individual. Now these days, the Pope, um, the Pope can't do that. It's a little different, but there's still stuff going on behind the scenes. I don't know exactly what they are, but there is stuff going on behind the scenes. Even though the Pope can't show such maliciousness so outwardly these days, but they've definitely had a history of that in their church. So this is probably the biggest example of a modern Christian having inspiration from God. So the Pope speaking ex cathedra, claiming to be Jesus Christ, being literally the most pompous person in existence. And this is why you need to know church history. If you're offended by what I said, then you need to read church history. That's what I'm going to say. You need to learn about church history. You need to learn about the history of the Catholic Church and just everything in general, just to get your mind cleared so you can think clearly about these things. So that's like literally one of the first things I'd recommend to most new Christians is learn church history. Um, so anyway, that's my second heresy. So actually, and so I talked about the Pope. So that one is so obvious. It's so obvious. Another group of people that claim to have inspiration, and this is also obviously a heresy, are the Pentecostals and Charismatics. So anyone, especially anyone claiming to be an apostle, there have also been a lot of cults, a lot of sects, like the Moonies, and it's very popular in China, in Korea, in Japan. I think, like, I don't know, Asian countries tend to be swayed by these like Christian heresies. Yeah, I'm back. So, yeah, Asian countries, I don't know why, but they get swayed by these like little Christian heretical movements, offshoots. Like so, and all of these movements, what they have in common is that the leader claims to be Jesus Christ. There's a ton of these, like just throughout history. I don't. It's very popular in like Korea and China and Japan. That area, the world. You'll get some, charismatic individual, and he's like, "I'm Jesus Christ," or "I'm Jesus Christ's brother." Like the Taiping Rebellion literally started a war. The guy claimed to be Jesus Christ's brother. So it's very common there. So this is the whole having modern inspiration, being inspired by God. So be very careful when anybody claims to be inspired by God. Anyone calling himself an apostle, I've driven by churches before where it would say, normally it says pastor so and so. It would say apostle so and so. I already know that's a cult. Okay, like nobody, no Christian that's trying to live a good holy life is going to call themselves an apostle. If you call yourself an apostle, you are full of the devil. You're pompous, arrogant, fool. Nobody calls himself an apostle. So, if you're a pastor, the correct term is pastor. Um, and you have to, you're humble. You're supposed to be humble. You're a servant before the Lord. You do not call yourself an apostle. So anyone calling himself that's someone trying to prophesy and predict the future and all this other stuff. And um, it basically anyone like that, arrogant, trying to you know put attention on themselves, they are not doing the Lord's work. So also watch out, like so the Pentecostal charismatic movement, it's all about like um, this outward show of spirituality, and people trying to predict the future and prophesy and all of that. Like that whole movement, it's all about the flesh, just a very fleshy movement. So you have to watch out for that. So this is where people claim modern inspiration, like God spoke to me in a dream and all this, and a lot of like it's usually very like it's either false, their prediction is false, or it's just very vague. Um, and I've heard of these people prophesying, and it's always something very vague. I mean, like, and if you keep like throwing darts at a board, you're eventually going to hit. If you keep making these vague prophesyings, eventually one of them is going to be true, right? So it's just a joke. It's a complete joke. So yeah. So watch out about these people claiming to be inspired by God. You have the Bible. That's your authority right there. Everything outside of that, be very cautious. Be very cautious if someone's telling you that they saw something in a dream, anything like that. Especially if it goes against the Bible, you already know it's wrong. Um, if it doesn't directly contradict it, I would still be very cautious. Um, Generally, it's not coming from from a good heart. These people going around prophesying for the future. So be very careful of that. Be very careful of anybody calling himself an apostle. Anyone, definitely be very careful of anybody calling themselves Jesus Christ or the brother of Jesus Christ or um, the substitute of Jesus Christ, like the Pope does. So anyway, so I went on quite a bit on that, but just be very careful of these modern Christians saying that they have inspiration. Like I'm not going to claim that. I'm not. So I'm preaching the Bible. I'm preaching the Word to the best of my knowledge. And you can read the Bible. You can verify if what I'm saying is true or false. I'm open to it. I can make mistakes. You know, that's what you're supposed to do. That's how you're supposed to preach. So yeah. So there's that. That's the second type of heresy. The third type of heresy is that only the concepts are inspired. Now this one, this is more like there's different ways this can be done. Sometimes it's like the fundamentals. They'll say the fundamentals are inspired. They'll say that, or they'll say. So yeah, so you can get like these fundamental churches. So this kind of goes into one of my later points about the verbal plenary inspired originals, but so some people take like, well, they like, I guess the liberal approach is that they would take out all the supernatural stuff and they would take in like the heart of the Bible, like the good morals of the Bible, and they would believe that, like, you know, the Ten Commandments, and they would focus on these outward things. Like even Karl Marx quoted the Bible. You know, he would use Acts chapter 2 verse 42, I think, to try to prove the Bible. There, wow, someone keeps trying to call me. So yeah, Acts. So even Karl Marx quoted the Bible, like, and you know, so like, I mean, anybody can quote the Bible and use it incorrectly, really. So it's not just the concepts. The entire Bible is inspired. So if you just believe, like, if you just believe it's just the ideas of the Bible that are inspired, this is kind of going into my first point where it's like just it's just regular people writing it. So just throw out the whole thing. You either accept the Bible completely in its full form, 100%, or you just throw out the whole thing. If you're just going to take just the concepts, well, what's the point of this? I mean, there's no point. Like, it's just a gray area. It's like, how do you know any of it's true then? You just throw the whole out, the thing out, and so that's the liberal end of the spectrum, where you just take the good morals of it. On the more conservative end of the spectrum, they would believe, you know, where only the original was inspired, but we have errors in our version. So that way, the truth is what I say it is. The one teaching you, the scholar, is the one that knows the appropriate interpretation. But you're stupid. You know, you're just a regular layperson. There's no way you can understand the Bible. You know, you have to understand the original Greek and Hebrew like I do. If you don't, then there's no way you can know the Bible that well. No, that's stupid. You don't need to know Greek and Hebrew to understand the Bible. God can reveal to you the truth through the Bible that you have, and you don't need anything else. You don't need to know Greek and Hebrew. Um, you know, I mean, I had to learn it at some point, Greek and Hebrew. It it can be helpful. It's only helpful if you're dealing with Bible scholars. Otherwise, there's no reason to know Greek and Hebrew. So it's not just so you need to believe the whole Bible is inspired. My fourth point. My fourth point actually just is the same as the third point. The fourth point is that it's partially inspired. So um, yeah, it's the same thing actually. So it's not really a separate point. I guess it's the fact that it's partially inspired. And once again, if it's partially inspired, just throw the whole thing out. You can't say part of it was inspired and part of it wasn't. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. And then, let's see, my fifth point, God did not use the personality of the writers. That one's a little hard to explain, but this one's actually very important. I don't think people think about this one, but everybody had a different personality. Um, so like Ezra, for example, or Mark, Matthew, and Luke. So they all have different personalities, right? Like Luke was a physician, he was a doctor. So in Luke, there's certain descriptions, there's certain details like that are mentioned that like show his personality, like Luke's personality. Like he pays attention to certain details, maybe some physical details that other people would not pay attention to. So you can kind of see the personality of the authors in the Bible. And this is where you got to get a little, you know, some people would say, well, no, I mean, if God inspired it, you know, you go the other end, like, what if God inspired it, then their personality wouldn't show through, right? If God inspired it, then it's exactly what God wanted, and he wouldn't use the personality of the author, because if the personality of the author, the human, is showing through the text, that it's not divinely inspired anymore, right? Because that's inserting the human element. But if it's divinely inspired, there shouldn't really be that human element in it. And this is wrong. And this is a very important thing to understand, is that God can still use that. God can still use the personality of the author, and it'll still be divinely inspired. God can do that. Just like in your daily life, you know, you have free will, right? You make whatever choices you want in life. But God can make anything happen the way he wants it, but at the same time you have free will. So he kind of works alongside your free will. and he already knows the future. And it's very hard to explain, but just because you have free will does not mean God is powerless to change the future and all of that, even though you have free will. It is pretty complicated. Like, so you do whatever you want, but God works with that. So that's how it works in daily life. And you have to be careful with that because this is where you get like into Calvinism, where people believe like God overpowers your free will, and you don't have you think you have free will, but you really don't. It's just God overpowering you now. It's like, no, you have free will, but God can still make things happen the way He wants them to. And so God can still use your personality. And so just like Ezra was a scribe. So Ezra, super detailed, right? He's just writing all these little details, these numbers and all that. So every book of the Bible is very different. It's a very different perspective. And God used the personality of the authors to write those books. And it's still divinely inspired. So just because he's using a human and he's allowing that human's personality to shine through does not mean it is not divinely inspired. It does not negate the divine inspiration just because a human wrote it and God used their personality and spoke through them. And it just makes complete sense. In daily life, we have different types of Christians. We have introverts, we have extroverts, we have educated people that didn't get an education. I mean, just men, women, children, old people. So many different classifications of people in different jobs, careers, different countries all over the world, from various cultures, and God uses those people. There's certain people that you can reach that other people can't, just because of your personality. And God will use you, your skills, and your talents to reach a certain group of people that other people can't. And He will use you instead of someone else. So God can use anybody, and there's a reason why God uses specific people to accomplish specific goals. So this is also a heresy, that God did not use the personality of the authors. And then my final point is one I already mentioned in a previous video, is that only the originals are inspired. So yes, this is a heresy. This is definitely a heresy. And this one's subtle. Like the other ones I mentioned, are a little more obvious. Like it's a blatant heresy. You know, the one about the modern Christians being inspired, that one's a little tricky. You run into that. You still have people claiming to speak, that God is speaking through them. But this last one here is a very devious heresy. You have to watch out for it. Is the belief that only the originals are inspired. So the original Hebrew and Greek manuscripts, those are inspired, but everything after that is a translation, and human scribes are not going to translate it perfectly. God couldn't inspire a translation. So there's this belief that God could not inspire translation, and therefore we have errors in the Bible. So this is a pretty strong heresy, because this is this could cause people to leave the faith, lose their faith in God. Plus, it also gives authority to the Bible scholar, the one who knows the Hebrew and the Greek, to usurp authority and to claim that he knows what the text says better than the average person, and that you have to go to these Bible scholars. This is a very similar format with the Pope. You have to go to the Pope, you have to go to the Catholic Church to understand the will of God. You can't just read the Bible yourself and figure it out on your own. You have to go to some higher authority to tell you. It's very bad. This is actually common in some churches, where they feel like people would ask the pastor about basic daily life questions about what they should do, what car they should buy, what house they should buy. And like, I mean, yeah, you can ask for advice, but seriously, like, you're just going to allow someone to make decisions for you. So the problem is, like, you should not be lifting anyone up on a pedestal that high. A pastor is just a normal human. Yeah, he's put in that position by God to preach, but that's it. We don't have that issue. So these popes and all that, this just creates a hierarchy, and God hates that. We're all equal before God. There is no hierarchy. Um, so yeah, this belief that only the original inspired, complete heresy. Because that you say, oh, my Bible has errors. Well, okay, then throw the whole thing out. You have to believe that God can preserve His words, and that is written in the Bible, that God will preserve His words. So yeah, because this is a very dangerous belief. The one about that you have to learn Hebrew and Greek just to understand the Bible in its entirety. No, you don't. Just read your Bible in your language, and you'll be good. So anyway, I've said a lot here. So that should conclude this video on heresies about the inspiration of the scriptures. And I'm going to continue next time. So this is part 5, and there's plenty more. There are plenty more videos on this topic. So yeah, I'll see you next time.